Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to the Trusted Connectivity Alliance webinar on the recommended 5G SIM. You may remember that the TCA already held a webinar on this topic some while ago. And that webinar back then was focusing on the new features and capabilities of the 5G SIM that were introduced in release 15. I'm now very happy and also proud to present to you the outcome of the TCA 5G working group that created a new version of the paper on the recommended 5G SIM. And this paper is highlighting and explaining all the new SIM features that 3GPP introduced in release 16 for 5G phase 2. I hope you'll find this session educating and interesting. To introduce myself quickly, my name is Claus Dietze. I work for G&D, Giesecke & Devrient, and I'm the chairman of the board of directors of the TCA. Let me start with a few slides on the Trusted Connectivity Alliance itself. The Trusted Connectivity Alliance is a global non-profit industry association that is working to enable trust in a connected future. And the vision that guides our work is to drive sustained growth of a connected society by providing trusted connectivity which protects asset and user privacy and networks. And our members that you will see on the next slide are leaders in the global TRE ecosystem, in particular for SIM, eSIM, and the integrated SIM. And as the TRE is a relatively new term, we have added a definition here for your convenience. The members of the TCA are global players within the ecosystem, and I'm happy to say that we grew last year, and I'm quite optimistic to welcome new members also this year. So the association is growing and is having some momentum. And let me do a little advertisement at this stage as well. We do have, as you can see, several membership levels, and if you're a player in the ecosystem, in the TRE ecosystem, and if you're interested in joining the TCA, please reach out to us. We are always happy to discuss that, of course. Why the Trusted Connectivity Alliance? What we do is we work together to drive innovation and evolution of the TRE and its ecosystem in general. We are promoting the benefits of the TRE in various market segments and verticals, and we are also supporting standardization or even create specification to further develop and enhance our ecosystem, in particular also to support the evolution that is ongoing with regards to cellular connectivity, for example, in 5G and the IoT. We are setting strategic goals and reviewing them every year and on a regular basis. For 2021, we have defined a couple of strategic initiatives and priorities for our work. The first one is on eSIM. And that is on the eSIM interoperability, where we work hard to improve that even further. And the other topic around the eSIM is that we would like to expand the benefits that it provides also to more and more IoT use cases. And IoT in general, of course, is also a topic, not only for the TCA, but in general. And as we think that the SIM is sitting at the heart of each device, and as the SIM is a tamper-resistant element, it's the ideal root of trust that could be leveraged and that should be leveraged actually for providing IoT security. And we are pushing forward on this one. And that also includes the successful collaboration and the continuation of that collaboration that we are having with GSMA on the IoT safe technology. This webinar actually is part of the third topic, 5G SIM technology. We are working on evolving, enhancing, and optimizing 5G SIM technology, and to also enhance the 5G network services around that. And this webinar is also used to educate the ecosystem around the benefits that the 5G SIM technology is providing. And we are also, and there is a dedicated publication and documents out there on TCA website. Please check that out. We are also stressing the importance of the subscriber identity within 5G, and we highlight the role that the 5G SIM is actually playing there and the benefit it provides. Integrated SIM, it's another hot topic, and we are also pushing on this one, though there is a focus on the integrated SIM technology within the TCA. And I'm also happy to announce and to guide you to a document that we have recently published. You can find it also on the website, which is called the Integrated SIM Functionality drivers, approaches to standardization and use cases. You can find that easily on the TCA website, and there is more to come, so please watch out for that. Last but not least, since let's say the inception of the SIM Alliance back then and the Trusted Connectivity Alliance, we are monitoring the TRE market on a regular basis through our membership. And with the evolution of eSIM, IoT, SIM, 5G and the like, we are of course also trying to enhance and working to enhance that monitoring process in order to continue to deliver industry-leading insights into the market and the development. But now let's jump to the topic itself, the recommended 5G SIM. Let's start with a short recap on what is the recommended 5G SIM. Let's first start with the obvious one, right? So the SIM. And when I mention SIM, I always include, of course, also the eSIM and the integrated SIM is the only platform, the only trusted platform, which can be used to actually securely access a 5G network according to the specification, just to state that. And back in 2018, with the release 15 and with 5G phase 1, we have actually come up with a document defining the recommended 5G SIM. And that document outlines all the technical features that have been introduced to the SIM technology and that are addressing in particular the challenge that an MNO is facing when he's migrating from earlier generations to 5G. So that goes well beyond the pure network access. And what we have done in the working group now is that we have enhanced this technical definition of the recommended 5G SIM to also include the new features and capabilities that have been defined by 3GPP and their 5G phase 2 or release 16. A little look into the market situation of what happened around this recommended 5G SIM. And as I mentioned previously, we are monitoring the market developments on a continuous basis. And the TCA member data showed actually that 2020 marked the first year of widespread 5G SIM deployments. And we are expecting this deployment of the recommended 5G SIM to grow even further and significantly over the coming years. So there is definitely some momentum around that. That's just to highlight that there is also the market traction which is picking up on this one. Enhancing the recommended 5G SIM. So what have we done in the document? And this slide should give you a couple of show a couple of main topics. First of all, there is evolution also in the SIM space, not only in the network architecture, but also the SIM is transforming actually to meet the challenges upcoming there. And the document that we have created is providing guidance for both the release 15 5G SIM and also the recommended 5G SIM covering the release 16 capabilities and features. So it's updating to both, it's updated to capture both versions and releases. And one important message here is that the recommended 5G SIM release 16 is fully backwards compatible to earlier releases, and that is important to know, and that is important for you also when you are considering now to introduce 5G, which version of the 5G SIM to go for. And we are clearly stating that should be the recommended 5G SIM of release 16. But what is actually new now compared to earlier releases and versions? Here is a list of features that we will now explain in more detail in the following slides. The first one is on private network access. Some call it dedicated networks. In standards, it's called non-public network. I will stick to the term private network throughout the rest of this webinar to make it easier. Then we are having enhanced subscriber privacy. Subscriber privacy was already introduced in release 15, and we are enhancing that actually. Cellular V2X Communication, vehicle-to-everything communication is also enabled now, and that's a couple of new features added there. And we also have improved mobile experience. And underneath this topic, we are grouping some other features in there. First is enhanced steering of roaming. Then we have network slicing, trusted non-3GPP access, and last but not least, multi-device and multi-identity that we are all covering in that section. Let's start with the first one, the private network access. 5G with its technology is actually driving rapid growth in private network deployments. And I did a little research checking the situation in Germany. And within the 3.7 to 3.8 gigahertz range, alone in Germany, 137 licenses have been granted to corporations by the Bundesnetzagentur, the German regulator in charge of that. So that's a significantly higher number compared to the public networks that are existing in Germany. And they have been granted to corporations coming from all different market segments, be it campuses, universities, industrial districts, factory automation, and many more. And of course, also not only those corporations can leverage that and benefit from private networks, but it's also a big opportunity for existing network operators that can dedicate parts of their 5G public network to cover that, which is driven or which is enabled in particular by the network slicing that I'm going to mention later on. And how does now the recommended 5G SIM help for that? First of all, it's providing the seamless user experience that people know from the public networks. So it's the same connectivity, the same privacy, the same security, the same way of working independently, whether you're in a public network or in a private network, and that's enabled by the recommended 5G SIM. It's also preventing fragmentation with regards to device management solutions. If you're doing the configurations on the SIM, it's helping to prevent the fragmentation because you don't have to do it on the devices. And it's also, of course, supporting eSIM management in the same way. So subscriptions can be managed in the same way in private networks as they can be managed in public networks. Again, so to summarize, actually, it's supporting all the different options. The recommended 5G SIM is supporting all the different options of private networks, and we are distinguishing between standalone private networks and the so-called public network integrated private networks, for instance, through network slicing. And we are also having wireless wireline network conversions. And the distinction between them is done in particular through the subscriber identity. So you have different types of subscriber identities that you can use to log on to those different networks. And in addition to that, a dedicated standalone private network USIM has been defined, and a new application identifier was allocated for this purpose and was already specified by ETSI and 3GPP. So that you can use this dedicated USIM application for logging on to the standalone private network, to the wireless wireline network conversions. You can also use it in case you have a public network integrated private network. But in that case, if you prefer to use still the IMSI as your subscriber identifier, you can also, of course, also use the regular USIM for that purpose. Next topic is enhanced subscriber privacy. And the subscription identifier is really the most prominent data that everyone has an interest in keeping that really private. So not only you and me, but this is also on the agenda of the European regulators and other regulations potentially around the world as well. The encryption of that identifier, which is sent over the network in previous releases, it's even sent in clear, was already introduced in release 15. But that was introduced for a SUPI that is of a type which is the IMSI. In release 16, there are now different other types that I've just briefly mentioned for the wireless wireline conversions, for example, and also for the private networks. Different types of identifiers can be used. And they have been added in release 16, and they are also supported now on the 5G, on the recommended 5G SIM. That allows this configuration on the recommended 5G SIM allows then operators to, first of all, configure that and to assure that the network authentication is done correctly and consistently. And it also enables the network operators to manage the SUPI concealment, so the protection of the subscription identifier, not only for public networks, but also for private networks. And that includes not only the configuration parameters and the algorithm parameters, but it also includes the algorithm itself. So also for private networks, the operators may choose to use a dedicated algorithm that can be put onto the recommended 5G SIM. By this, it's also reducing backwards compatibility and interoperability issues compared to when doing that, for instance, in the device, because it's a standardized way of handling that. If you would like to learn more about subscriber privacy and the benefits of the SIM, again, let me mention the documents that TCA has published around that topic. Please feel free to download that on the website again. The next topic is a cellular V2X communication. And with the invention of 5G, a couple of new capabilities have been introduced. In particular, lower latency, wider bandwidth, higher reliability, greater responsiveness. All these topics actually enabled and improves cellular V2X communication for the use cases which are really critical. And those use cases include road safety, traffic management, but also infotainment and business use cases. So all of those features have been enabled based on the new 5G connectivity that is provided. What is the SIM doing? The recommended 5G SIM supports the configuration of such services, and there has been a new specification developed by 3GPP for how to do that configuration, and the file system and services have been introduced accordingly to the recommended 5G SIM, which is helping to address that, and which is helping also in this case to address and to avoid market fragmentation across the different operating systems that are used in the various vehicles. And it's also, of course, by this ensuring a consistent V2X functionality. We are now entering into the last category with a couple of features, the improved mobile experience. And the first one that I would like to explain here is the new features that have been added with regards to 5G roaming. 5G roaming, or not only 5G roaming, but roaming in general really remains an important topic for the network operators. It's a driver for additional revenue for them, and therefore it is, of course, considered to be a priority. However, it's important that the roaming policies that are delivered to the SIM within the preferred PLMN lists are actually applied in a reliable way. And that this is also, of course, crucial to achieve an optimized user experience. The existing traditional solutions, however, are showing some drawbacks and some limitations. As you know, the preferred PLMN lists with the current traditional SIM-based steering are delivered over an independent OTA channel using, for instance, SMS. And the delivery may not be as reliable as required. And therefore, 3GPP developed a new specification that is actually coupling the transfer of this PLMN list with the signaling registration. And therefore, it can be expected that there is a 100% success rate for the delivery of the PLMN lists. And this is something which has been standardized. And of course, this is also supported then by the recommended 5G SIM. It enables this new way of steering of roaming for 5G standalone networks. It's supporting the traditional way of steering of roaming for the non-standalone networks. And the new version, of course, it's removing the technical drawbacks that I just mentioned with regards to the reliability. And it also guarantees confidentiality and integrity of the sensitive business actually agreements that are involved in these roaming topics. Next one is network slicing. I have mentioned network slicing when I was talking about the private networks. And you can understand network slices as being a set of logical networks that are sitting on top of a shared physical infrastructure. And as they are now logical entities, they are quite flexible. That allows network operators to really dynamically and flexibly configure those network slices, even ad hoc. And this enables the network operators, of course, to meet the new demands of new use cases, and also enables them to create new business models and business cases for them, which is creating, of course, also additional revenue and also has some cost efficiency impacts. It is important, however, that the devices that are out there in the field are already pre-configured with the slice information in order to have a good user experience again there. So when the end users are switching on the device, it's important that the configuration is already there and used. In fact, the recommended 5G SIM is supporting several configuration parameters to be managed onto the SIM, and this ensures, as I just mentioned, that the end user devices are already well configured from the very first switch on. It also provides a standardized and cost-effective way again to store those network settings. There are policies that can be stored as well. The user equipment route selection policy is one of them that is determining how to route the outgoing traffic. This can be managed there as well. And again, the argument there that the highly fragmented 5G ecosystem with lots of different types of devices for IoT, for the vehicles we mentioned, and many more, doing the configuration in a standardized way on the recommended 5G SIM, of course, also helps and avoids complex and device-dependent configurations to be done. On top of the configuration support that is added to the recommended 5G SIM, there is also an enhancement to the 5G SIM toolkit, which allows SIM-based applications, applets to be developed that can benefit and leverage these new parameters and these new services being available there. The next topic, also with regards to improved mobile experience, is the trusted non-3GPP access. And need to mention here that in 3GPP release 16, several different access technologies are actually supported, as well as the handover between those access technologies. And if we talk about non-3GPP access, and then we refer to technologies that are not part of the 3GPP specifications, that are not part of that, and those could include, for instance, WiMAX, wireless LAN, fixed networks, CDMA 2000, and the like. And it should be stated that providing services and using those non-3GPP technologies, of course, also has various benefits in areas where there is no coverage or bad coverage, for instance, offloading some of the traffic to those ones, and of course accessing services through those technologies still guarantees that the service is used, right? In that case, for the non-3GPP access, we split that into two categories, the trusted one and also the untrusted one. Let's focus on the trusted one. For the trusted non-3GPP access, the MNO actually trusts and operates the access points on the network. And they are using their credentials that are used for the authentication to that network, which are derived from the security context of the network. And that is how that is done, and the way the authentication takes place with regards to this, and by using, for instance, EAP 5G, that is standardized as part of release 16. The recommended 5G SIM is supporting that. Of course, it should be noted that it's not specified in 3GPP which of the non-3GPP technologies are actually considered trusted or untrusted. It is up to the MNO to take that decision. And the MNO needs to be able to configure that then somehow into the devices. And the recommended 5G SIM allows for that configuration. So the MNOs are able to configure the access points, which are assumed to be trusted, into the recommended 5G SIM. And of course, it's also possible then for them to easily manage and update the list of access points during the life cycle of the device and the SIM. The last topic in that category is multi-device and multi-identity. Well, that is rather obvious. There is a growing demand for multiple identities that should be enabled on a single device, so allowing different subscribers to call, to message, and to use the various services. On the other hand, a single user with a single user identity may want to use this identity across multiple devices. And also here, the recommended 5G SIM provides some services and configuration capabilities to support this. And by supporting this, it delivers actually the flexibility to enable both cases, the multiple users on a single device, as well as the single user across multiple devices. And with that slide, actually, I would like to come to the conclusion already. Okay, the key conclusion and the key takeaways that I would like you to take with you from this webinar is that the Release 15 5G SIM that we have originally recommended included a lot of technical features that were addressing the challenges that the MNOs were facing when they were migrating from earlier releases to 5G networks, so beyond the network access again. And what we are also seeing is that there is a lot of momentum for the next phases. So 5G phase 2 deployments are going on there. And therefore, we strongly advocate for the adoption of the enhanced Release 16 recommended 5G SIM with all the features that I've just presented, as they will enable the MNOs to unlock the full potential of the 5G network. And I would like to also point you to the website again. You can find the document Trusted Connectivity Alliance Recommended 5G SIM definition on our website, www.trustedconnectivityalliance.org. And I would really encourage you all to download this document and to have a read. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to hand over to David for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Claus. Before we move on to the Q&A session, I just want to remind everyone that a recording of this webinar will be made available on the TCA website and also our YouTube channel. So thank you to everyone for submitting their questions, and a reminder that if we don't cover your question during today's Q&A, that you will receive a response via email. So to kick things off, let's start with this question first, Claus. What does a 5G capable eSIM offer compared to the traditional removable SIM card?
Well, there are actually a couple of questions in this question. The first question maybe is there a difference between a 5G eSIM and a 5G SIM in terms of 5G features and capabilities? And the answer to this question is no, there is no difference. All the 5G features that we have discussed in this webinar are of course available not only on a traditional 5G SIM, but also on a 5G eSIM. The second question that seems to be included in that, what is new in 5G compared to the previous releases? And actually, I hope that I could answer this question during the webinar by explaining all the various new capabilities and new features that have been added to the recommended 5G SIM. And the last question is potentially, what does a 5G eSIM offer in addition or different compared to a traditional removable 5G SIM? And well, the answer to this is that it offers the eSIM remote SIM provisioning capabilities as defined by GSMA and their set of specifications. And I hope that that answers the question.
Great, thank you, Claus. Moving on to and something that's been referenced, you've referenced both the Release 15 5G SIM and the Release 16 5G SIM. So is Release 15 still recommended, or are we moving fully now to Release 16?
Thank you for that question, actually. The answer to this question is it depends, right? For certain capabilities or requirements, for instance, such as private networks, you need to have a Release 16 capable recommended 5G SIM. Other deployments and use cases, the Release 15 5G SIM may also be suitable, but we strongly recommend to use the Release 16 recommended 5G SIM, noting that this is also fully backwards compatible with the earlier release. So independent on the use cases if you want to leverage everything already at the first place, but it allows you good transition to later releases if you're already launching 5G with the latest version of the recommended 5G SIM, which is the Release 16.1.
Perfect. And I think we've got time for just one more question here. Will the 5G SIM be different in case the 5G network is standalone or non-standalone?
That's also a good question. For the non-standalone network, earlier releases of the SIM actually can be used, right? You can also use a 4G SIM to access that. However, as we have mentioned also for release 15 already, in order to smoothly transition from a non-standalone to a standalone network, we strongly recommend as a TCA to also migrate to the recommended 5G SIM as early as possible, right? By this, you're allowing new features and capabilities to be available already when you're starting and switching on your 5G standalone network without the need to swap the SIM later on.